If you were to examine the media landscape of children's entertainment, a common topic of what we'll charitably call conversation is the potential moral value a work can have on its audience. More so than other forms of storytelling, there's an imperative that children's media have an element of education within it, even if the purpose of the show isn't meant to be primarily informative. To be clear, there's nothing wrong with this line of thinking. All media has the potential to inform our worldview, and media creators should try to use their platforms as entertainers with at least some level of responsibility. But in a media landscape where we see certain shows face harsh criticisms for the moral implications of their stories, it is interesting whenever a show overtly takes these questions of morality, in a manner of speaking, off the rails. Hacky train puns aside, Infinity Train is one of those shows that has captivated audiences with its eclectic cast, enticing mysteries, and enthralling worlds built upon the tracks of the titular Infinity Train. Though, one of the more interesting elements to this show is how certain viewers have hailed it as a departure from standard presentations of morality seen in other modern cartoons. And while I personally disagree with this perception, for reasons that I'll get to later, it does provoke an examination of how the show interprets concepts of who is a good or bad person. What does it mean to be evil, and who can be considered morally a hero or villain? While it might seem like this is a new form of examining modern media, this lens of moral criticism is about as old as our surviving perceptions of literature itself. In the 10th book of the Republic, Plato made the assertion that in order for a work of art to have value, it must convey a set of positive morals and virtues for the purposes of benefiting the state, exclaiming how, quote, "Poets may stay as servants of the state if they teach piety and virtues, but the pleasures of art are condemned as inherently corrupting to citizens." While this is a woefully outdated way of viewing art, it does present the interesting opportunity of examining the show's moral philosophy, which begs the question, what are the morals of the Infinity Train? On its face, this seems like a simple question. After all, the purpose of the train is to take on people that are going through a turning point in their lives in order for them to become better individuals. Pretty straightforward, right? A bad person gets on the train, they are assigned a number based on their lives, and they begin to learn lessons about themselves, where they return home once they eventually get their number down to 0 after learning how to properly improve themselves. For example, Tulip Olsen, the main character in Book 1, boards the train, a very selfish person, trying to cope with her parents' divorce, and slowly doing good acts and learning how to be an empathetic person and more flexible in the face of uncertainty. This is a very deontological approach to ethics. A person commits different acts with the intention of becoming a good person and is likewise rewarded for those actions. Though this begs the question, how do the numbers quantify these good acts? What does the train consider a good action or intent? Can an action get your number down even if it has unintended consequences? If you were to ask online, someone might say that the train follows what TV Tropes calls blue and orange morality, where an entity's moral framework falls outside of a human's perception of right and wrong. And while this does seem to fit the mechanics behind this train, this fails to consider the universal truth of art. Art is created by humans, and can therefore be interpreted within humanity's perception of art and storytelling, and likewise, morality. As alien as certain versions of blue-orange morality might seem, many such examples operate on the idea of the Übermensch, as coined by Friedrich Nietzsche, where one's sense of morality is determined by the values of the most powerful individual in a society. By being the most powerful entity, they get to determine the state of the world, regardless of its effects on others. Because the train seems to have so much power, to the point of being able to create sentient life, would it not, therefore, be a credible source in determining how to live the most effective life? Such a philosophy can help to contextualize the mindset going into how the train treats its passengers. Nietzsche believed that the process of developing as a person was akin to transforming, and attributes 3 stages to this transformation. In the first stage, we are seen as complicit and unwilling to face risks, like members within a great flock. By boarding the train, it forces us to differentiate ourselves from others to become something better. Once they are on the train, they will begin the process of leaving this comfort zone by choosing to actively overcome the hardships they encounter. As Marcus Aurelius would say, the obstacle is the way. Hardship isn't the barrier to growth, it is the source of it. Though it is not enough to mindlessly complete each obstacle, it is also important to find an internal meaning to each obstacle and apply them to the struggles seen in everyday life. It is through this an individual is able to enter the real world with the sense of internal meaning, responsibility, and awareness that would allow someone to live a fulfilling life without the necessity of a god or ideology to base your perceptions of the world around. Like many things on the train at first glance, this does seem like a reasonable progression of events, though it's important to closely examine the implications behind these good intentions. For as much as one desires to help these passengers that board the train, the systems they have put in place immediately become unstable once we take a consequentialist approach to this show, as we examine the ways that this line of thinking affects both the passengers and denizens of the train. Consider the case of Amelia Hughes, a woman who boarded the train after the death of her husband Ulrich. This was someone who was at a breaking point in her life, to the point where it is speculated that the train found her before she was going to attempt suicide. Based on the intent of the train and one, this was considered a morally good action to take. Like other passengers, Amelia boarded the train so she may learn to move on from her grief. While I don't want to insinuate that it would have been better to let this woman stew in her grief, there are unintended consequences behind bringing her on the train. Seeing the capabilities of the train, she demanded that it make a car that would recreate her past. When she couldn't get what she wanted, Amelia took over the train for the next 33 years before being defeated by Tulip. Under her control, she helped to make the train a more hostile environment, as well as help influence the ideologies of a rogue group of passengers called the Apex. Despite the good intentions and motivations of the train, someone with a consequentialist view of ethics might deem this act as one with a net negative moral conclusion. But if that is then the case, are we then responsible for every bad thing that occurs as a result of our actions? Do good intentions overshadow the aftermath? Is it fair to assign some of the moral consequences to certain actions if there was little to predict these negative outcomes? What does this mean for the opposite, when we examine a situation purely on the basis of the actions itself? Think now about the rules that govern the world of reflections. The mere police force, or the flex as they are called, have a full intent to protect the barriers between the prime material world and the world of reflections. If you were to present this scenario to someone like Immanuel Kant, he would definitely side with the flex. Throughout the series, the flex were following what Kant might consider a categorical imperative, rules that can never be broken or manipulated in order to be considered moral. Such categorical imperatives would bring about 2 rules. The first would be to never contradict the rules set forth by the system in place, and the second would be to never ignore the humanity of others. For example, if you were to say steal from someone, you would implicitly also support the act of everyone else choosing to steal under the logic of this system. And likewise, if every reflection was free to leave the mirror world, or if every train denizen was allowed to return to Earth, that would lead to chaos. Therefore, under these categorical imperatives, the barriers between the mirror world, the train, and the real world must remain unshattered, and can therefore be considered the most moral set of actions to take when examined through Kant's perspective. But the show goes on to point out how dehumanizing this line of thinking can be to those who suffer the consequences of this mindset and action. It's heavily implied that every reflection is a conscious being that is meant to be a slave to their prime world counterparts, and that denizens of the train are relegated to a secondary class of individuals in the service of assisting any passengers that they encounter. But what this goes on to demonstrate is how simply committing acts with the intention of doing good or improving yourself doesn't inherently demonstrate a morally good value. Because good intentions can lead to untold amounts of pain if the potential consequences are not considered or are ignored. How many passengers on the train died before their number went to zero? How many died not because they didn't take any steps to improve themselves, but because they were unable to survive the untold dangers found within the train? Between this and the examinations of the consequences and intents behind the actions of the show, it seems like there is little ways of distinguishing a method of being a morally good person. Perhaps then the only way to determine what is right and wrong is to put it in the hands of a true Ubermensch, someone who demonstrates the capacity to show their agency in the face of the chaotic train, exhuming strength and cunning as a leader above the others. Someone like Grace, one who proves to be truly above the other passengers, above their naive and pathetic friendships and morality. Just the strongest, taking what is rightfully theirs from these denizens of the trains, these parasites leeching from the infinite resources of the train, never proving to be strong or rational, instead opting to focus on their feelings and numbers, trying to leave the train. That must be the only way forward, right? Otherwise, there would be no other way to comprehend this train, right? There has to be some inherent meaning to this train, right? Some theories or analysis that can provide all the answers I need. Someone has to have the answers. Well, who is it? Where is the meaning behind any of this? These are the types of questions one might discover in the face of such moral uncertainty, in times where it is hard to even tell what is fact or fiction. But there is another way to view the morality of these actions, and that is to embrace the chaos of the universe. In the case of the train and the real world, it is clear that the train is not a flawless being and can't therefore be considered an absolute source of morality. And blindly following a set of rules and ideals, be they from religion, a government, your parents, a charismatic leader, or even a simple set of numbers, will not lead to happiness, but instead lead to complicity. So, where does someone go from here? In the case of the train, there is no set solution to becoming a better person and getting your number down. Each passenger follows a different path to improvement and must address their own problems in order to continue on with their lives. Therefore, Infinity Train encourages its audience to become skeptical of codified systems of morality. Part of what makes this message so interesting is that, ironically, many have praised this show because other cartoons don't take that same approach to moral dilemmas. Why doesn't this TV show treat its antagonists like this show? Why couldn't they take a harder stance on these ideas? Why didn't Steven just kill the diamonds, those cowards? As much as I understand the desire to see certain shows take more creative risks like Infinity Train, demanding that other creatives try to match the moral compasses of this show undermines the whole idea of rejecting these systems of morality, propping up a certain moral compass just because of a subjective preference. Instead of finding a standardized way of viewing and criticizing people and media for their moral implications of their thoughts and actions, it falls onto each of us to find this path for ourselves, be it through seeking the betterment of others, the betterment of our own relationships, or even the betterment of ourselves. In many ways, the train represents the process of life. It can be full of beautiful and wondrous sights and experiences, but it can also be hostile, cruel, and chaotic. Or more succinctly,
This place has some stuff that's okay about it, and some stuff that could be better.
Though, however we go about making it better, it is important that we keep our fellow passengers in mind. We can't simply apply a one-size-fits-all approach to morality, especially within the context of different backgrounds and worldviews of our media. But we can still reach a consensus of something's moral worth through critical analysis and learning more about others' perspectives on what is right and wrong. While none of us know where our own infinity train is heading, we ought to make it the best possible journey for each other. Thank you for watching. Best wishes.